Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to be talking about movement today and how that can work, how you can work with the body to, help overcome some challenges and maybe shutting down with kids who are autistic or just heck, any of us. We can all get stuck sometimes. And so we're going to maybe learn some ways and some things of how we can get unstuck. So it's going to be a really great conversation. As always, I welcome you at any point in time to, drop a comment or a question in the chat, and we will be sure to answer those for you. We'll also be sharing some helpful resources along the way. So please, use the chats, and I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today. So with that, let me introduce you to Dr. Lori Bodino. And Dr. Lori is a certified clinical psychologist and a board certified dance movement therapist, which I think is so cool. As a former theater major, whenever I hear about dance majors or whatever, I think you are just the coolest people in the world. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. And also joining us today is Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben is the clinical director of Positive Development California. And he is an awesome person, a big believer in DIR therapy. And what I love is actually, Dr. Lori, we heard about you through Dr. Ben. So Dr. Ben, I don't know, any words that you could say about Dr. Lori?
Well, I am thrilled. When Lori agreed to join us, I told her my heart is just full to hear her get to share her knowledge and experience with the viewers of, our live stream. So I'm really excited that she's here and that we're doing it today.
Yay! All right, well, let's get to know you a little bit more. I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit about your practice and your approach using movement therapy.
Of course. So I work with children, I always say 0 to 18, because we work with attachment and parenting support from the time we have a baby in our womb all the way up till they're ready for their adult lives. And I typically work in a clinic office as well as in homes supporting children. And I also go into schools. During this past year, I've been doing virtual sessions. And then I also started and provide therapy at bedside to children with cancer and special needs at the pediatric hospitals, where I typically go and work at our hospitals. But first and foremost, any sessions that I provide is looking at the whole system, looking at supporting the child through, like I like to say, if pathology, illness, and challenges live in the body in our experience through movement, then what better way than to understand children and help them understand themselves through their body and what they're communicating. And we're all such innate movers. We're always moving, whether it's eyes or heartbeat or big gestures. And so it's an exciting field to start to realize that we're all movers.
Brilliant. And Dr. Ben, how did you first discover, Dr. Lori and her background? What's your experience been?
Yeah, we were in a mentorship group together with Dr. Dan Siegel, learning interpersonal neurobiology and MindSight, both brought towards that through our own interests in interpersonal neurobiology that have been kind of on parallel paths with a lot of overlapping experiences working with autism and believing in movement and interest in neurobiology and kind of the science of the clinical work and the ways to bring the neuroscience into our clinical practices. So I've always shared a lot of these parallel passions, and we became part of the same cohort of mentorship group with Dr. Siegel, and a group of us became friends from there and have stayed in touch, and had the fortune of working directly with Dr. Lori through the practice that I had at Real Connections Child Development Institute, and she was able to be a supervisor for us there. So we just have stayed in contact and stayed friends over the years.
Awesome. Well, I wondered if we could start off today just talking about maybe the philosophy of movement, and how that integrates into a therapeutic practice.
Absolutely. I'm jumping right in, Ben. So, like I mentioned, that we're all these innate movers, and there's this incredible parallel process that happens when we experience emotions and psychological needs. It happens through the body. And so, as clinicians, as providers, parents, if we start to look at how is the child communicating, you might be familiar with seeing a child in a state of, I know when you started the introduction, you were talking about challenges, right? Or feeling stuck. You see this chaos, and you see asynchrony. You see big movements, big noises, right? That can take over. But you also see on the other side of the scale, this rigidity, this confinement, this tension. And in those two states and anywhere in between, we get a lot of information from the child. And so the idea, as Ben and I worked so diligently to understand about integration through Dr. Siegel and other providers and professionals, is that we're trying to find that balance. We're trying to find that regulation. And to me, the easiest and really a safe, beautiful way is through movement, through the body. And so we're looking at this parallel process of the child's experiencing. And we don't just think of it, or I don't just think of it as like something mental happening in our brains or only in our brains or through words, but the child shows it. We all show it in our bodies. And so that's where the movement starts. The other piece I would say is that, oftentimes in my title, we hear the word dance, and people think, oh, does that mean you're teaching dance, or what is this about dance? But if we expand the word to think about dance as movement, our conversation today, we're working on timing. We have to stop and start, and we have this relationship of a dance. And that's what we're really talking about, is that every interaction is a dance, is the gestures, the postures, the facial expressions. And that's how we want to look at therapy. It's really fun. It's quite predictable once you start to look at movement, and we pull away from judgments, and we look at life as these are choices. These are how we're moving and interacting.
Interesting. So, when I think about, some of the non-movement, kind of that rigidity or maybe that shutting down. Dr. Ben, I wondered if you could talk a little bit just about what may be going on during those times. Because it can appear that people, don't want to communicate or are unable to. And so, kind of what's going on inside during that.
Yeah. Specifically to the non-movement, you described shutting down. I think of rigidity. One of the things that Lori and I share in our thinking is looking at rigidity and chaos and thinking of integration, them both being signs that there's integration isn't happening. So that those are the two signs that we look for in pathology, and sometimes we see both rigidity and chaos together. So the shutting down and I think of it as a tension. The way that you described it, Stacy, the muscles are tight. There's a tension, but there's a lack of movement. The movement itself is shutting down. There's also a version of that could just be kind of tuning out, overwhelmed, and becoming what as psychologists we would call dissociative, but the muscle tone is actually lower, and there's a disengagement and a kind of a different kind of shutting down. And then there's also maybe a lot of movement, a chaotic rather than rigid kind of running around and a lot of chaotic movement. So, all of those are different ways that the body is dealing with stress and forming a stress response of either rigidity or chaos or both. There's a lack of integration. There's a lack of coherent presence and awareness that is happening. And so, there's a stress response that happens that you see, resulting in various forms of a rigid or chaotic movement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wanted to add to that, Dr. Ben, that when we see these movements on the outside, when I'm talking about that parallel process, it gives us a cue. If we could look at it from that lens and say, if that child's feeling that and we're seeing it, what's happening internally? And I talk about it in terms of congruence, that we're constantly seeking to feel that what we experience is true and comfortable or familiar, that's our truth, that's our experience. It doesn't mean it's always adaptive, but we're trying to find that balance. So if that child is feeling this inner turmoil or inner or overload from the world, they might present that way outwardly. And then sometimes, there's some nuance to this. Sometimes we see the flip, we see the opposite, where they're experiencing something inside and it looks quite different outside. So there's some nuance to all this, but when I hear us talking about it today, I just wanted to bring that awareness of like that lens, that we get some information as providers and parents to say, oh, maybe this is giving us information versus just trying to say we need to stop it. And why is our child doing that? A lot of parents say like, why are you doing that? And instead we could be like, oh, you're doing that. That's information.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. Because, you hear, or I've even experienced myself, in parenting, hey, your child is doing something and, you're in a public place and it's like, oh my gosh, we can't have a meltdown, in the middle of X, Y, or Z, or, something's happening that's really disruptive. What's going on there, and how should we be approaching those moments, I guess?
We could both jump in, right? There's so much, right? There's so much. There's a nuance to this, and none of it's always feels so easy. I love empowering parents to find the predictability in our children. So we don't see things as hard, but it's quite predictable. So you're asking, what's going on there? Is there a mirroring of their outside experience and they're trying to have control over it, some organization over it? We're constantly finding organization. So is that what they're trying to communicate? Have they experienced that if they do certain actions, it's a way or a means to get to a need, meaning like to leave that setting, to increase that setting, right? So if we look at their movements and their reactions as an adaptive response, they're quite brilliant. I always love, I don't have to live with it, right? So it's easier said if I'm not that parent of that child, maybe. But I always love those children because I'm like, what a brilliant child that they've realized how to control this space by maybe being quite big and moving in a circle, running around or shutting off. So, and I say that again, not because it's easy, but because when we have that humility to sit in and drop in and notice how brilliant these kids are, the tension goes away, the judgments go away, and we start to be more curious. We start to be able to say like, what's this all about? How can I join in? What can we do from here?
I can add a little bit to the question. And what is beautiful about what you said, Dr. Lori, is there's so many possibilities. Yeah. So I think being curious and being open to, what is this child's experience right now, and being humble to know that you don't know, but remembering that they're doing the best that they can, and the kids aren't naughty on purpose without a purpose. So sometimes they are naughty on purpose, but they even then have a good reason that they feel a lack of control, and this is a way that they are trying to get more of a sense of control. And so how to give them a better sense of control, how to come alongside them so they feel supported in our work, here at Positive Development. And I know Lori shares this. We have a lot of focus on the idea of co-regulation. So what is it going to take to co-regulate? And we always start with a sense of shared safety and connection to be able to co-regulate. So what are the sensory challenges that are present that maybe are feel unsafe? What are the emotional or social things that are present that may feel unsafe? And doing what we can to create safety and doing what we can to create the connection. And one of the most effective ways to connect is through movement, paying attention to their movement, joining the body, connecting with the body, possibly mirroring the movement, possibly doing a contradictory movement, possibly supporting their own movement. So being creative, curious, as Lori said, and open to the child's movement. And it shifts our focus from kind of the behavior and the horror that we might be feeling about what does this mean, and just shifts our focus into the body of our child. And this is the best that they can do right now, and this is what they're doing, and let me join them in some kind of way. You don't have to run around in circles with them. That's not always even helpful. That might make it harder. But appreciating through observing them. Maybe we can hear Lori's acronym. In our work, we use the wait, join, build. But Lori, I know, adds a lot to that with how she approaches her sessions.
Yeah, actually, when you're saying that too, I was thinking about how we're actually having to ask parents and providers to even look at our own bodies. So when parents saying, well, I tried to join, or I tried to be curious, and I tried to be empathic, I tried to be this peaceful, calm parent, but I would challenge that, because we all get into these states of like, what is our own body doing? Did we really change the physical part? And when I talk about taking away the judgment, it means if your child punches and we think punch means aggression, if we switch it and say punch means direct, strong, quick movement, those are just qualities. It's fantastic to be strong, quick, and direct. Where do we put strong and direct and quick movement? How else can we move strong and quick and direct? How can we do the opposite, which would be, can we put lightness in? Can we be indirect, meaning like take up more space, because when we go straight towards someone, they could get hurt, right? So there's these qualities that come about, and then the judgment goes away and our child's just moving. And we get to just move with them too. Do you want me to dive into this acronym dance?
Yes. I heard this earlier and I thought it was so fun.
Yeah, so I was really excited because I constantly was hearing like, you're a dance teacher? And I was saying, I love dance teachers, but I am not a dance teacher. But the word dance is actually, to me, a definition of integration, which, as we mentioned before, is this way of getting health for our children. And so when you are with your child, you're thinking about the D is for differentiate, meaning like breaking down the movements, really like slowing down to, as Dr. Ben, you talk about like waiting or observing, right? And so we're observing, we're waiting, we're differentiating, and we're seeing my child's not bad, my child is moving. What does that movement look like? How are they moving? Are they moving a little toy? Are they lining things up? Are they running around in a circle? What is that? What are they doing? Pure and simple. Then we're going to attach the movement. That's the A. So we're bringing the movements together and saying, hey, it's not so simple. It's not just like one piece of their hand moving. There's like a whole body. There's parts of their body that are still. There's parts of their bodies that are moving quickly. And can we actually do it too? Can we attach and move with the child in those ways? And as Dr. Ben, as you said, you might not run around in circles. You might just put words to it. They might be moving, but you move your arm, not your whole body, because maybe you don't feel like getting up. So there's different ways you can do this. Then you're going to N is the narrating. You're putting words to the actions. We hear this all the time in child development work is narrating, really putting words to what we experience. And that brings this all to consciousness. That's the C. So really helping the child know, I'm with you, you are seen, and you see me too. That's that co-regulation. We've brought the movements together. We've narrated consciousness. And then the E is for the engagement. You've already got that. The empathy is there. You've got this emotional relationship. So that's the dance.
That's the dance.
That's the dance. And we're always doing it. I mean, we're doing it right now, the three of us, right?
Yeah, that give and take, the mirroring, the reflecting. Yeah, that's really interesting. So as you're, just thinking about how you go about kind of explaining this or teaching this to parents, like being in the situation, like how do you help parents slow down and observe? Do you have any maybe advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I would just say to start using that as a lens. I
Hmm.
often hear parents say maybe they don't understand, like there's a lot of science that we're talking about, and so movement is innate and we're already doing it. So it's giving yourself permission that you probably know more than you think. We're all embodied, we're all movers, we're all capable of this. So love to start there to kind of validate that you've got the tools already, you've got the ability already, not lacking anything. And then it just starts by watching, really looking before we talk. Um, we used to say like affect gestures word, right? We start with like what's our facial expression doing? How are we coming to observe our child? How are we gesturing, just using our body, and then we're putting words to it. Oftentimes we flip it. We come to our children with lots of words and lots of information about what they should or should not do. But that's kind of how we start, just starting with your body, noticing your breath, noticing your posture. And it's a process. There's no right or wrong. That's the beauty of this work. Sometimes it's confusing about this work because it feels like, oh, I wish it was an exact science. It's like if I move this way, it would mean this, and if I move that way, there's some more there's a vagueness to it. But it's so beautiful because there's no way to do it wrong. Often parents are like, I don't know how to do it. The children in front of us, they're already doing it. They're already moving. All you have to do is try to see what that's like. Put it in your own body.
I love that. Dr. Ben, how do you see movement, in therapeutic sessions? How have you seen this employed, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, what we find in sessions is, we start with safety and regulation, like I was talking about. And what we found, and at this point I would say no to be true, is movement is critical for regulation. We're embodied beings as human beings, and our bodies are made for move. The brain, body, our whole beings, our whole system is made for movement. Movement is what we're all about, so movement is critical to support regulation, and regulation is always the foundation of our work. If there's not regulation, you're moving up to more advanced levels to work on communication, cognitive thinking and understanding, problem solving, relationship and engagement. All the areas that we want to work on all require regulation. And so movement is really critical just in that way. And then we also use movement in a variety of ways for connecting, and for problem solving in space. So really important for the whole brain that the body is moving and that the body is connected, and that the body is a part of experiencing life. When we just focus on cognitive skills and tasks, there's a lack of social emotional integration that happens for the whole person. And so in all of our work, integrating the body with engagement and relationships and communication and thinking, cognition, they all come together. So the movement needs to be a part of it. And actually, as we talk about, we don't need to get into this today, but just to make a quick point of it, movement and thinking, and relationships and engagement, cognition and thinking and relationships and engagement, those are areas of movement in themselves. There's movement that's necessary for them, and they're also a form of movement. The brain is processing them as movement. And so, movement is throughout our whole sessions, and from being critical component to the most foundational part of regulation, to then, being a part of integrating all the different areas that we're wanting to address and work on, and then also being a part of addressing each of those individual areas.
I was sorry. I was wanting to give an example for parents. I was wanting to give an example of, wanting a child to speak about a difficult situation, having a dissonance at home. The child wants it one way, mom wants it a different way, and this child, let's say, this girl starts to get up and doesn't speak and starts to move and throw an object across the room. You might think about therapy or education or parenting where you would tell the child to sit down and let's have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But the child is physically showing a response. They're choosing this. It might not be a fully integrated choice, meaning the most adaptive choice. It might be very dangerous. It might be less effective because the parent is now shut down because they're trying to stop their child from throwing. But if we can, when you're talking about like in the session, movement being a part of the session, I might encourage the parent to actually get up and start to do the same movement with that child. Use that communication as another word. So I talk about subtitles. It's like the foreign language is this throwing. You're just seeing this movement and we're like, what is that child communicating? But underneath, it's like, hey, look at this control and release that I'm showing in this movement. Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's control and then a release. It's about bringing to myself and then letting go. And that's the process we're in. We're talking about I'm child. I have something that I'm holding on, and now I'm being told to release that idea to mom, and I'm physically showing it in my body. And this happens all the time. It's incredible. The child will show something. They'll build a wall around themselves, and you're thinking, why are they building with these pillows? They're building a physical boundaries around them because they're realizing I need to have space. So they're constantly moving in the body. And that's what we're talking about, these observation skills, is as a parent, you start to realize, oh, they're speaking right now when they're moving.
And I especially think for nonverbal, kids who are nonverbal, I mean, how important this is to observe and try to, I guess it's like detective work, trying to figure out, what is it that they're trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So here's a question. So as you were talking, I was thinking about like moments when you try to stop a child from moving. And the thing that came to mind was stimming. And I've been reading a lot of articles, lately, don't try to stop stimming, that it can be a good thing. So I'm wondering if you could talk about maybe like what happens to a child when you try to stop them. And, maybe how do you approach, I don't know, like, I guess it's kind of feeding it into something positive, but yeah, just what happens when you try to stop something?
Sure. You want to start, Dr. Ben?
Well, I have an example. Maybe you can comment on it.
Of course.
I have a lot of stimming, as a common thing in working with clients, and you get a variety of perspectives from other professionals and from other parents. I have a client that working with currently that has a lot of stimming. And it's perceived a certain way by various people, but fortunately, our team has developed an approach that is redirecting the stimming. So the child needs to move for regulation. So just like I was saying, the regulation is so foundational. Movement is so foundational to the regulation. So this is a child that always really needs to be moving. And so a lot of that will look chaotic, like, the stimming might look chaotic. And that's fine when the child's enjoying that and, has their experience. It can be a way to decrease stress. In fact, there's been some research that has looked at stress levels with biomarkers. So using wearable technologies to study stress levels, and then, what do we see the different behaviors of somebody on the autism spectrum? How do they match with the biomarkers that we're seeing? And with stimming, what's seen is that stimming is a way to decrease stress or keep a homeostatic level. And to hold in the stimming actually will directly result in increasing stress, which is so consistent with, Stacy and I had this wonderful conversation with Haley, and Haley really talks about the mental health effects of having to mask and having to hold in the stimming, and how that creates a lot of stress and a lot of exhaustion on the system. So the movement is really important. But what we've done with this program is to redirect the movement into something that is more functional. So either they're like moving the hands and having a clenching, or doing something that we all have, things that we do that are movements that look more socially acceptable. And I won't share mine right now. The mask and hold them as we talk, but finding some of those ways that can then, for this child, be functional to his regulation. So the function is to maintain regulation. So and then it's a collaborative process for this child too, because if he is just told, well, you need to do this, and it's treated kind of as an inappropriate behavior that he needs to stop or change, that's an emotional trigger for him. But if it's treated as a collaborative process and sort of like, this is something that you can do that's functional, that's effective for you, it's not disruptive for the classroom, because the issue becomes a lot of big movement stimming becomes a disruption for the classroom, but we can actually replace it with a functional movement. I mean, it's functional in terms of his regulation movement, so it's still meaningful and functional for him. And so that's a way that we can work with movement to shape it and look at it as necessary, but not still have a boundary around it. Still, understand that we don't want to create a huge stress of masking, as Haley talks about, but there may be some needs for reshaping stimming or behavior in certain contexts.
Yeah. And when we're talking about like a learning experience, a meaningful learning experience for the child who is stimming, is helping them expand. I talk about like expanding that toolkit so that we have multiple ways of soothing and supporting this dissonance the child's experiencing, or the stress response the child's experiencing. So we might take the movement they're doing and put it in a different body part. So let's not use our head to move back and forth, but we can use our feet, or maybe we're tightening and releasing our tummy muscles, or like our shoulder postures, or just our breathing. So we're expanding their options. And then also, I call them like sensory superpowers, but like thinking about like what other way can we adapt and expand on those senses that we're having. So maybe we can't do something with our hands right now, but we can really look at putting that into what we're looking at, or putting it into what we're listening to. And again, just really helping that child have more resources to be able to sit through a classroom or to attend to a task that might be challenging. And it comes from the body.
And I just think about, like having to live in a world that is just not designed for you. Like, why do we have to sit still in a classroom, or, the social norms? Why does it have to be certain ways? And can we be more accepting and funnel, or, give these kids some more options?
Yeah. Well, the good news is I feel like each year we come to terms with the idea that that's an old way of practice, of sitting still to learn. And we know that the brain and body learn the most when we're moving and integrating and co-regulating with one another. So we're adapting our school learning, we're adapting our home expectations. So hopefully we can all keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And there is so much, I mean, just even hearing about this today, I can't wait to observe more. just to kind of watch and see and just look for some of these clues. I'm really looking forward to that. So what I love about this, and what I love about these conversations is, the chance to learn, the chance to understand, the chance to try something different. I once had a therapist encourage me to try something new and different every single day. Yeah. And so, if you're a parent and you're trying to navigate all this and try to figure out, oh my goodness, what's going on, I hope that there's been some information, that has helped maybe expand your understanding. What I'd love to do now is, well, first off, if you have any questions or comments, please use the chat and share those with us. I wondered if we could maybe end with some do's and don'ts. So, some practical takeaways from our discussion today about, what do we do to encourage our kids and what should we not do? So, thoughts?
So on the top of my mind, I'm thinking we should not, or don't assume this will never end. Meaning, there's a natural rapprochement. So when we join in the movements, when we acknowledge where the child is, you're going to, that's the do part. So there's a release and a relief that comes through, and the child will find a place to rest and slow down, and their child will learn how to be still and have a balance. So we don't want to assume, oh gosh, that fear response of this will never end. It will keep going. That's my first don't assume.
Don't assume. Okay, great. Dr. Ben?
Yeah, I throw in the do that jumps into my mind is pay attention to your own body. Pay attention to your own movement. Use your own movement for your own self-regulation as a person on the spectrum, as a parent, as a therapist, teacher. Like, we need to start with our own regulation, and we know that paying attention to our own movement is supportive of a more integrated state of being. So just like using your own movement and just attending, bringing your attention into your breath, into your body, in whatever ways are supportive and tolerable for your own regulation. And paying attention to that too. When I pay attention to my breath, does it make me more anxious or does it make me more calm? What if I pay attention to my posture and I just feel my spine and my torso as I'm paying attention to my posture? Does that help me feel more calm? Or maybe I need to twiddle my thumbs and do a little bit of movement. And so, but beginning to notice in your own body.
I have another don't. I'm being the don't. I'm going to say don't label. We put lots of labels on our children of lazy, difficult, aggressive, rude. I've said them all as well. I'm a parent as well. They just kind of come out. But we want to strip away those labels and just try this lens of its movement. It's quick. It's timing. It's a gesture. Just trying that as an option versus a label.
That's good. There's so much to learn, by observing. So yeah, that's wonderful. Dr. Ben?
Oh yeah, I was going to add a don't, see if we can switch the Lori could be herself. I know she's a yes woman. Yeah. It's because the yes is just the light that's so great for the brain. But so my don't is don't stop movement. So you can look to redirect movement to be more functional, to be more safe. But rather than stopping movement, redirecting movement or joining movement or celebrating movement, having enthusiasm. I use enthusiasm as a wonderful principle for helping kids know their own experience, and so just observing and using rather than stopping movement. So don't stop.
Yeah. Okay, so my do would be to think about what the child can do. So we can move over here. We can push over here, we can jump over here. So what can we do? If you find yourself saying, no, stop, no, 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 we're going to give more options of what's possible. What's allowed.
Yeah, I love that. And two, I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, how often do we use that with kids? No, don't do that. It makes me think of, did you guys see the Yes Day movie
Yes.
that came out not too long ago, or the book?
I did.
Like, Yes Day. So, yeah.
Do
be a yes.
Well, because we get that. I see it as like a record, old school record, where there's a skip mark, and if a child's doing something over and over again and they're stuck, it's like you're going to move the needle over and give a different playlist, a different song, a different choice, right? So sometimes our children, just as brilliant as they are in that moment, they're stuck, and so we're going to give them more options. What's possible? There's always something that's possible.
I love it. Ben, any more from you? Any thoughts?
Sure, I can add one more too. And I would say to consult with movement therapists like Lori, occupational therapist, good physical therapist, yoga therapist. There's lots of options for bringing more movement into the therapies. And so I would say, consult and make sure that you feel really good about the people that you're working with in your movement team, particularly, the occupational therapist, such a central part of our work in positive development. And so, embrace that on your team as a parent or as a professional or as a, self-advocate to have good support in the movement.
I love that.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I have a do. So do listen to these guys because they're really smart.
Thank you.
So I'm just wondering, as we're kind of wrapping up, Dr. Lori, how can people learn more about the work that you do?
Well, Dr. Ben knows and I mentioned this before, but I'm a yes person, so I'm always open to collaborating with other providers and parents, like giving support groups and connecting. I love the conversations. So my website and all my social media is my name. It's drloribadino.com, and finding me, I try to post on social media and YouTube clips, and again, Dr. Ben and I, a couple months ago, we did a collaborative health summit. So I try to put together health summits to provide information of resources to families. So please feel free to reach out and connect.
And we'll put those links in the comments too. So if you're curious and want to check out some of that, we'll have a link there for you. Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you so much for spending time, chatting about all this today. I know that there's so much more, that we will learn and we will continue. It never ends. And just really appreciate your wisdom and your expertise and what you shared today. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. So you know what? Look for this space. We'll be doing this again. Our hope is to share on a weekly basis. So stay tuned, and we look forward to more conversations. Take care.
Bye.